We're going to close out the 8th chapter of Ketubot by merging together two questions which we've been dealing with simultaneously in the beginning of the chapter. The first question is, what happens to money that a wife acquires during or before the marriage? And the second question is, okay, what happens if her husband dies childless? So I guess she's childless too. And then she has a connection of Yibum to her brother-in-law, who, by the way, is also one of the heirs of her deceased husband. So the question of the property ownership is complicated, and we discussed in the previous Mishnah whether property goes to, for example, her father's house, or because, well, in the case that she dies, where does her property go? She's in this in-between state, if you like, between being the widow of her husband and possibly being the wife of her brother-in-law. That's the state. So the Mishnah picks up, Hiniach achiv ma'ot. So his brother left money. Actually, we're not quite sure. We're not quite sure to whom he left he left the money to, but let's just say his brother left money. This is the brother of her Yabam. This is her deceased husband. And of course, her deceased husband, all his possessions are mortgaged to her Ketubot. So that's fine. He can leave money. But all its possessions are mortgaged to her Ketubot. So it's not clear that his executors can just get rid of that money straight away. And the Mishnah rules, so his brother left money. This must be brother left money to the surviving brother. Land should be brought with it. He enjoys the income, because even though the capital is mortgaged to her Ketubah, he can still enjoy the income from it. Produce detached from the ground. We're seeing here the pattern that we've had in previous Mishnayot. Produce detached from the ground. If it's produce detached from the ground, that's just like money. We've learned this in a previous Mishnah. So land should be bought and he enjoys the income. So we protect the principal, but the inheritor can enjoy the income. What about if he leaves produce attached to the ground? So produce attached to the ground. Amar Rabbi Meir, Shamino tulchama hen yafim b'perot, v'chama hen yafim b'lo perot, ve'hamutar ilakach b'hen karka ve'hu ochel perot. So as far as produce that's connected to the ground is concerned, Rabbi Meir is going to tell us exactly what he told us in the case of the straight inheritance. We're going to value the land with and without the produce. And land's going to be bought with the difference. And he's going to enjoy the income. And that is presuming that Rabbi Meir has the assumption that produce which is attached to the ground is somehow part of the inheritance. So we value it and we deal with it just like part of the inheritance. And the sages will disagree, just as they did in the previous Mishnah. And the sages say produce attached to the ground is his. Remember, the sages have a view that the husband's entitled to any income from land. So they take the view that if she inherits, or if he inherits, if she inherits produce which is attached to the ground, then that is his anyway, because he's entitled to income from her property. So even if the property is basically mortgaged to her Ketubah, the property, the crops growing on it are not mortgaged to her ketubah. So the produce attached to the ground is his. That's just growing produce. And then they're going to say, by the way, rather than mortgaging produce that is detached from the ground, the rabbis say, as far as produce detached from the ground is concerned, the first person who takes it gets it. So the sages don't take the view that movable property is mortgaged to the ketubah. Kol hakotem behen zachar, kadam hu zachar, kadma hi, yilakach behem karka, vehu ochel perot. So if he was first, he acquires it. If she was first, then she acquires it, but land is bought with it and he enjoys the income. And the Rambam in his commentary makes the comment that while in the time of the Mishnah, the rabbis ruled that movable property wasn't mortgaged for the sake of the ketubah, actually today, and the Rambam is talking, okay, today, but in his time, but the same is true today, I believe, that the later halacha was that in practice, all property was mortgaged to the ketubah. So nowadays, everything is mortgaged to the ketubah. But someone, it seems to be that wasn't the consensus at the time of the Mishnah. Kanasa, what if he married her? So this is the brother-in-law, right? So he can marry her because he's the Yavam. Maybe he ends up marrying her. So he marries her. Kanasa, harahiki ishto l'chol davar. If he married her, she's like his wife in all respects. And that means, by the way, that she keeps property she brought into the marriage, but he enjoys the income. He's like his wife in every respect, except her ketubah remains a debt on her first husband's estate. She's still got the entire. She's still entitled independently to the ketubah from her first husband, who might also have left money to her new husband if they're brothers. Well, they are brothers because he's the Yavam. So she's got a right of inheritance via the ketubah, and he's got a right of inheritance because he's the dead man's brother. And he has to give her that ketubah. Lo yomar la harei ketubatech menuchat al shulchan. He can't just say, look, here's your ketubah, kind of take the money. Ela chol nechsav acharin achra'in leketubata. All of his property, this is all of the deceased husband's property, is mortgaged to her ketubah. V'chein lo yomar adam leishto. And similarly, a man shouldn't say to his wife, harei ketubatech menuchat al shulchan. A man can't say to his wife, look, your ketubah lies on the table. He has to say to her, kol nechasai achara'in leketubbatech. He has to say to her, all my property is mortgaged to your ketubah. And so to speak, in the view of the Rambam, this will be literally all the property, but the Rambam makes the point that in the time of the Mishnah, this didn't apply to movable property. Gersha, if he divorced her, so the Yavam has married her, and now he's divorced her. So she's divorced. First, the first husband's died, the second husband divorces her. Gersha, ein la eila ketubah, ein la eila ketubah, hechzira. If he divorces her, she's only entitled to her ketubah. In other words, she can't make a claim on all his possessions, just the ketubah. Sorry. Gersha ein la eila ketubata. If he divorced her, she's only entitled to her ketubah. Hechzira. If he then remarries her, harehi lo l'chol anashim ve'ein la eila ketubata. If he then remarries her, she's like all wives. She's only entitled to her ketubah from him, and the all her rights with respect to the previous husband, the deceased husband, just disappear.